She walked into the small hall, carrying nothing but a simple piano case and a quiet determination. The room was modest, with folding chairs arranged in neat rows and a few people already murmuring among themselves. The walls were lined with faded posters of past events, and the wooden floor creaked slightly under the steps of latecomers. It was not a grand stage, but it was a place where she could share her love for music, even if it went unnoticed by most. She set down her piano case gently and began to unpack the instrument. The audience was already beginning to settle, though a few laughed quietly, whispering to each other. There was nothing unusual about the scene to them. A young woman, alone, playing piano in a small town hall. They expected simple melodies, nothing that would leave a lasting impression. Some had come because they had nothing better to do, some to kill time, and a few had been persuaded by friends to watch. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the quiet anticipation. She had performed in front of people many times before, but never had it been like this. Here, there were no big lights or cameras, no promises of fame, just her and the music. She looked at the keys, worn from years of use, and smiled faintly. Each note held memories of late nights, of learning the hard way, of small victories and the joy of discovering sounds that only she could bring to life. The murmurs in the room grew louder as the audience noticed her presence, and some even began to whisper about how ordinary she looked. She did not seem remarkable in any way. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back in a loose braid, and her face held a calm, almost shy expression. No one would have guessed that her fingers could move with such precision and passion, that she could make a piano sing stories from the depths of her heart. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and let her hands hover above the keys. The room fell into a quiet hush as people realized she was about to begin. Some of the audience leaned back, folding their arms, smirking slightly, confident that this would be just another ordinary performance. There were a few who watched with curiosity, sensing a hint of talent perhaps, but even they did not expect what was about to unfold. She pressed the first key gently, the sound ringing clear in the small hall. It was soft at first, almost hesitant, but there was a subtle beauty that began to draw the attention of the listeners. Some stopped whispering, tilting their heads, trying to understand what they were hearing. The melody was simple but had a delicate charm that hinted at something more beneath the surface. Her fingers moved with a quiet grace, each note carefully placed, each chord resonating with a sense of purpose. The audience began to notice the skill hidden in the simplicity. The laughter faded, replaced by curiosity. Eyes widened slightly, and some leaned forward, sensing that they were witnessing the start of something unexpected. The music was not loud or flashy, but it had a way of reaching into the hearts of those who listened. It was subtle at first, like the gentle ripple of water before a wave grows strong. She let the music flow naturally, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, lost in the moment. She had played this piece countless times, but every performance was different because it was never just the notes that mattered. It was the feeling behind them, the story they told. And tonight, she wanted to tell a story that would touch those who thought they had seen it all. A few people in the back shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. They had come expecting nothing, and now they were caught off guard. The laughter that had filled the room moments before was gone. In its place was a quiet amazement, a slow realization that this was no ordinary piano performance. Each note seemed to reach out to them, wrapping around emotions they had long forgotten, stirring memories and feelings they could not immediately name. As she continued, her confidence grew. She began to add small flourishes, subtle changes in tempo, and variations in dynamics that kept the audience on edge. The music became a living thing, breathing with her every movement, telling a story that words could not capture. People who had been skeptical were now leaning forward, their eyes fixed on her hands, fascinated by the skill and emotion she displayed. Some began to whisper to each other in astonishment. One person quietly said, "She is really good," while another nodded, unable to speak more than a simple expression of awe. They had laughed at her arrival, but now they were silent, captivated by the unfolding beauty. The room had transformed from a casual gathering to a place where music held everyone's attention, a shared experience that left no one indifferent. She played with intensity and tenderness in equal measure, moving seamlessly between soft, delicate passages and powerful, commanding sections. Her fingers danced over the keys, never missing a beat, each movement purposeful and precise. The music built and flowed, taking the listeners on a journey they did not expect to take that evening. It was not just skill. It was emotion, passion, and a deep connection to the music itself. The performance continued, and with every note, she seemed to disappear into the piano. The audience could feel her presence, her dedication, and her love for the art. People who had come to mock now sat in quiet wonder, unable to look away. Even those who prided themselves on knowing music recognized the extraordinary talent before them. They were witnessing someone who could turn an ordinary piano into an instrument that spoke directly to the soul. Time seemed to stretch as the music filled the hall. Some closed their eyes, letting the sounds wash over them, while others watched in rapt attention. No one moved to leave, no one dared break the spell. The young woman at the piano was no longer just a performer. She had become a storyteller, a guide, and a force that demanded their attention and respect. As the piece came to a gentle close, a hush hung over the room. It was a moment of shared disbelief, a pause as the audience tried to comprehend what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, the first applause broke out, timid at first, then growing louder as people realized the depth of her talent. Some were on their feet, clapping with genuine admiration, their laughter from before completely forgotten. She rose from the bench, a quiet smile on her face, acknowledging the audience with a humble nod. She had not sought their approval or recognition. She played because it was her passion, her way of expressing what words could not. But seeing the impact of her music, she felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that she had reached them in a way that few performers ever did. The hall buzzed with conversations after the performance, people sharing their amazement with one another. They spoke of her skill, her emotion, and the way she had transformed a simple evening into something unforgettable. Some admitted they had been wrong to underestimate her, and there was a newfound respect in their voices. What they had expected to be ordinary had become extraordinary, and they were grateful to have witnessed it. She packed up her piano quietly, listening to the stories and praise around her. She knew this was just one performance in one small hall, but it mattered. Each note she had played carried her heart and soul, and it had touched others in a way that would not be forgotten. As she stepped out into the night, the cool air brushing against her face, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The journey of music was long, but moments like this made every challenge worthwhile. Even as the crowd dispersed, whispers of her performance lingered. People would remember the evening when they laughed at the ordinary piano player and found themselves amazed by the extraordinary music that followed. They had witnessed a transformation not just in the performance, but in the way they saw talent and passion. And for her, it was a quiet affirmation that she was on the right path, that her music had a voice, and it had been heard. The first few notes had settled into the room, leaving a quiet ripple among the audience. She paused for a moment, letting the sound linger, as if testing the waters. The soft murmurs and shifting of chairs gradually faded as people began to pay attention. The hall, once filled with idle chatter and laughter, was now drawn to the subtle energy of her music. Even those who had come to mock now tilted their heads, unsure of what to expect next. Her hands hovered over the keys before she began again, this time with a slightly bolder touch. The melody she played was familiar, yet it held an unexpected depth. Each note seemed deliberate, carrying emotion that words could not describe. She did not rush. She let each chord breathe, allowing the audience to catch the nuances hidden in the music. Some listeners closed their eyes, swaying slightly, absorbing the delicate layers of sound that flowed effortlessly. A few people exchanged glances, trying to understand the calm yet powerful presence she exuded. One man whispered to his companion, asking if she had performed elsewhere before. The other shook their head, equally puzzled. She had no flashy introduction, no grand announcement. She simply let the piano speak, and that was enough to captivate everyone in the room. The skepticism that had lingered moments before was fading, replaced by curiosity and a growing sense of awe. She shifted her posture slightly, and the melody changed. The notes grew more intricate, intertwining in ways that demanded attention. She moved with a natural grace, her fingers flowing across the keys as if they were extensions of her own thoughts. Each passage was carefully constructed, yet it felt spontaneous, as though the music was discovering itself in the moment. Some audience members leaned forward, fascinated by the combination of precision and emotion. The woman in the front row, who had been quietly skeptical, now had her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She watched, unable to look away, feeling a mixture of surprise and admiration. The young performer seemed to command the room without a single word. There was no need for showmanship or grand gestures. Her music spoke louder than any words could. The audience slowly began to sense that they were witnessing something rare. There was a shift in the room as she introduced a slightly faster passage. The rhythm quickened, yet it did not feel rushed. Her fingers danced over the keys with a lightness that contrasted the intensity of the sound. People could feel the energy growing with each measure. Some tapped their feet quietly, drawn in by the subtle pull of the melody. Others simply sat still, eyes wide, letting the music reach into a place they had almost forgotten existed. Even those who had arrived with casual curiosity or idle amusement were now captivated. The laughter had disappeared completely, replaced by hushed murmurs of disbelief. How could someone so unassuming create something so moving? Questions buzzed silently in their minds, but no one dared speak out, afraid of breaking the spell that had taken over the room. She was creating a shared experience, a quiet yet powerful connection that touched every listener. Her music shifted again, softening to a gentle, almost fragile tune. It was as if she were telling a secret, inviting the audience into a personal moment. Some people felt a lump in their throats, emotions rising unexpectedly. Memories stirred. Faces and moments long forgotten flickered in their minds. She played not just with skill, but with an understanding of how music could touch the human heart. Every note carried intention, every pause had meaning. The whispers of admiration began to grow among the audience. People leaned toward each other, sharing their reactions in quiet tones. "She's amazing," one said. "I didn't expect that," replied another. A few nodded in agreement, still unable to take their eyes off the piano. The energy in the hall had transformed completely. What had started as a casual performance in a small venue had become an intimate, unforgettable experience for those present. She allowed a brief silence to follow a particularly delicate chord. The sound lingered in the air, leaving the audience breathless. Then she began a new section, one that combined a slow, melodic introduction with a gradual build toward a powerful climax. Her fingers moved with precision, yet the effect was organic and natural. It was clear that she was not just playing the piano. She was expressing a story, guiding the audience through a journey that they could feel but not fully describe. The crescendo arrived, filling the hall with rich, resonant sound. Chairs seemed to vibrate slightly with the intensity of the music. People held their breath, caught in a mixture of awe and admiration. Some instinctively leaned back, overwhelmed by the unexpected power that came from someone they had assumed would deliver only a simple, ordinary performance. Their previous judgments were gone, replaced by respect and fascination. She slowed the tempo again, transitioning to a section that was tender and introspective. The contrast was striking, emphasizing her ability to convey emotion through every note. Listeners could sense the thoughtfulness behind each chord, the deliberate choices that made the performance feel alive and authentic. The music seemed to tell a story without words, revealing a depth that few had anticipated from someone so quietly confident in appearance. A few members of the audience felt tears welling up in their eyes. The music resonated with personal experiences, evoking emotions they had not expressed in years. She had not planned to move anyone to tears. Her goal was simply to share her love for music. Yet the honesty in her playing transcended intention, reaching directly into the hearts of those listening. The hall became a place of shared vulnerability, a quiet testament to the power of art to connect people. She paused briefly, glancing at the small group of people who were now completely engaged. Their expressions had changed from casual amusement to deep appreciation. Some nodded subtly, acknowledging the mastery they were witnessing. Others whispered to themselves, unable to articulate the emotions that had taken hold. She did not notice the attention as she focused entirely on the next segment, allowing her own feelings to guide the flow of the music. The audience began to notice the intricacies of her technique. Subtle variations in tempo, gentle emphasis on certain chords, and the effortless transitions between sections revealed a level of skill that was exceptional. Even seasoned listeners recognized the talent before them, marveling at the way she balanced technical precision with emotional depth. It was a rare combination, one that made the performance unforgettable. She built up to another peak, gradually increasing the intensity while maintaining clarity and control. The energy in the room surged, drawing everyone into the experience. People who had initially doubted her ability now felt a mix of admiration and wonder. The young performer had challenged their expectations, turning preconceived notions on their head. The room was alive with the presence of her music, and each listener felt a personal connection, even without knowing her story. As the section reached its climax, she allowed the notes to linger, filling every corner of the hall with resonant sound. The audience remained still, as if not wanting to disturb the moment. They were completely immersed, caught between disbelief and amazement. Her music had transformed their experience, making the ordinary extraordinary. The simple appearance of the pianist had become irrelevant. It was the power of her talent that commanded attention and respect. Finally, she eased into a slower, reflective passage. The music softened, carrying a sense of resolution and peace. Listeners exhaled, their hearts still racing from the intensity of the previous moments. The hall seemed to hold its breath, savoring the lingering notes and the delicate emotions woven into the performance. She was no longer just a performer. She had become a storyteller, conveying experiences and feelings without a single word. The audience began to clap softly, gradually building into a louder, more enthusiastic response. Some were on their feet, unable to contain their admiration. Smiles and nods of respect spread across the room. People who had arrived with casual interest or even skepticism now recognized the extraordinary talent in front of them. Her music had broken through barriers, reaching directly into their hearts and leaving a lasting impression. She smiled quietly, acknowledging the applause with a gentle nod. The journey had been about more than just notes on a piano. It had been about connection, expression, and the courage to share one's passion. She packed up her instrument with care, aware of the impact her performance had made. The audience continued to talk excitedly, replaying moments in their minds and sharing their astonishment with one another. As she walked out of the hall, the night air felt crisp and refreshing. She had experienced a quiet triumph, not through recognition or fame, but through the immediate effect her music had on those around her. People would remember the evening when they had come expecting ordinary entertainment and instead had been touched by something extraordinary. She had not only played the piano, she had told a story, evoked emotions, and transformed perceptions. And for her, that was the greatest reward. That as the evening continued, she felt a quiet surge of energy. The music had begun to transform the room completely. People who had come with casual curiosity were now absorbed in every movement of her hands. Their initial amusement had vanished, replaced by an unexpected awe that filled the small hall. She felt it too, the shift in the atmosphere, a silent acknowledgement that something extraordinary was happening. Her fingers moved more confidently over the keys, exploring deeper and more complex melodies. The music began to tell a story that was richer than before, a blend of joy, sorrow, hope, and longing. Each note she played carried a piece of her soul, and the audience felt it, even if they could not explain why their hearts were stirring. The piano became an extension of her emotions, and the music took on a life of its own. Some members of the audience leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the unexpected intensity. The expressions on their faces shifted from polite interest to genuine fascination. Eyes widened, brows raised, and hands unconsciously moved in rhythm with the flowing melody. They could not have predicted this. The young woman who appeared so ordinary was weaving magic with her music, pulling them into a world they had not known existed in such a small hall. The music changed again, moving from soft, gentle passages to powerful, sweeping chords that seemed to fill every corner of the room. She played with precision, yet the sound was alive, breathing with emotion. The audience could feel the contrast. The delicate whispers of the piano followed by the commanding presence of each powerful chord. Some sat back, overwhelmed, while others were drawn closer to the sound, as if wanting to absorb every note. A few whispered to each other, barely audibly, expressing their astonishment. "I never expected that," one said. "She's incredible," whispered another. Their words reflected the common realization in the room. Talent could not be judged by appearances. She had challenged their assumptions and left them with an unforgettable experience. The music was no longer just notes. It was a bridge connecting her to everyone listening. She allowed a brief pause, letting the resonance linger in the hall. The audience, caught in the magic of the moment, remained silent, savoring the impact of each chord. Then she began a new section, more intricate and nuanced. Her fingers danced across the keys with remarkable fluidity. The melody intertwined with harmonies that moved with unexpected grace, creating patterns that seemed both spontaneous and perfectly calculated. It was a skill that left even those familiar with music quietly amazed. Some were completely absorbed, eyes closed, feeling the ebb and flow of her performance. Others watched in disbelief, their attention fixed on the fluid movements of her hands. Each note, each pause, each flourish told a story. The ordinary woman they had underestimated was now a storyteller, weaving emotions and experiences through the language of music. Her passion was palpable, and it resonated with every listener. The hall was no longer filled with casual chatter or background noise. Every person present felt the energy and depth of the music. Even those who initially doubted her skill were now caught in the spell. She had found a way to touch their hearts without a single word, creating a connection that was invisible yet undeniable. The music became a shared experience, something that transcended the boundaries of the hall and reached into each person's soul. She shifted to a section that was softer, almost ethereal, as if telling a secret only the audience could hear. Her fingers moved delicately, brushing over the keys with subtle precision. The melody carried a gentle sadness, a quiet reflection that seemed to draw people in. Some felt tears prick their eyes, others felt a lump in their throats. It was as though the music reached into forgotten corners of memory and emotion, stirring feelings they had long ignored. The audience was silent, held captive by the power of her playing. Even the most skeptical could not deny the beauty unfolding before them. Some began to whisper to each other, their words carrying wonder and admiration. "She's amazing," one said softly. "I can't believe this," replied another, shaking their head in awe. The shared experience created a sense of unity among the listeners, a quiet acknowledgement that they were witnessing something special. As she continued, the tempo shifted again, gradually increasing in intensity. The music became more dynamic, building anticipation and excitement. Her hands moved swiftly yet effortlessly, creating a flow that was both powerful and controlled. The audience felt the energy rising with each note, caught in the momentum of the performance. Their earlier expectations were shattered, replaced by admiration and a growing sense of awe. She played a section that combined technical brilliance with raw emotion. Each chord resonated with clarity, each phrase carried meaning. Listeners could sense the dedication and practice behind every movement. It was not just talent. It was hard work, passion, and a deep understanding of music that made the performance exceptional. People who had arrived expecting an ordinary evening were now witnessing mastery in its purest form. The young performer did not pause, allowing the music to flow seamlessly. She moved from intense, dramatic sections to soft, contemplative passages, keeping the audience engaged and emotionally invested. Each transition was smooth, creating a narrative that held their attention completely. No one looked away. Every person was absorbed in the story unfolding through the piano. Some members of the audience felt a sense of disbelief mixed with joy. How could someone so seemingly ordinary create such extraordinary music? They had laughed and underestimated her, but now they were completely captivated. The contrast between her appearance and the depth of her talent made the performance even more remarkable. It was a reminder that true skill often lies beneath a quiet exterior, waiting to reveal itself at the right moment. The music reached a crescendo, filling the hall with a powerful and moving sound. The vibrations seemed to touch every corner of the room. People held their breath, swept up in the intensity and emotion of the performance. Some instinctively leaned forward, drawn into the experience, while others sat back, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment. The young woman had created a space where music became more than entertainment. It was an emotional journey shared by all. Then she transitioned to a softer, reflective section, giving the audience a moment to absorb the impact of the crescendo. The melody was tender, almost fragile, inviting listeners to pause and reflect. Her fingers moved delicately, each note placed with intention and care. The audience felt the contrast, appreciating the balance between intensity and gentleness. It was a skill that spoke of both technical mastery and emotional intelligence. The atmosphere in the hall was electric yet serene. People were fully engaged, their hearts and minds connected to the music. Even those who had initially doubted her skill were now silent, lost in admiration. The young performer had captured their attention completely, guiding them through an emotional journey that was both personal and collective. Each note carried meaning, each pause invited reflection, and the overall experience left a lasting impression. She allowed the final section to flow naturally, combining elements of strength and vulnerability. The melody rose and fell, weaving a tapestry of sound that was both complex and accessible. The audience felt the emotional resonance. Some moved to tears, others to quiet contemplation. The ordinary woman they had underestimated had revealed an extraordinary depth, leaving everyone changed in subtle but profound ways. When the last note faded, a hush fell over the hall. For a moment, no one moved or spoke, as if reluctant to break the spell. Then the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder and more enthusiastic. People rose to their feet, clapping with genuine admiration. Smiles spread across faces, and whispers of praise filled the room. The music had created a moment of shared wonder, a memory that would linger long after the evening ended. She rose from the bench, a quiet smile on her face, acknowledging the audience with a humble nod. She had not sought recognition, yet the impact of her music was undeniable. People who had doubted her now respected her deeply. They had learned a lesson about the power of quiet determination and the importance of not judging based on appearances. The evening had begun with laughter and underestimation, but it ended with admiration and awe. As she packed up her instrument, the audience continued to discuss the performance, sharing their amazement with one another. They spoke of the skill, the emotion, and the unexpected depth she had revealed. The young performer left the hall quietly, aware of the effect her music had had, feeling a sense of fulfillment that came not from praise alone, but from knowing she had shared a piece of herself. The evening had been extraordinary, not because of grandeur or spectacle, but because of the quiet power of her talent, which had touched every heart in the room. The music had reached a point where it no longer belonged just to the young woman at the piano. It had become a shared experience, connecting her with the audience in a way that transcended ordinary performance. She could feel the energy in the room, the quiet awe, and the emotional engagement that had grown steadily throughout the evening. Each chord she struck was met with rapt attention. Each delicate passage held the room in a gentle suspense. The ordinary space had been transformed into a place of wonder and connection. As she continued, a few people in the audience whispered to each other, realizing that they were witnessing something special. Some had come with no expectations, others out of mild curiosity. But now, none could deny the extraordinary talent before them. One woman, a music teacher, felt a thrill of recognition. her eyes widening as she recognized the skill and emotion in the performance. She whispered to her companion that this was not simply practice or talent. It was mastery and heart combined. The young performer was commanding attention not through words or appearances but through the sheer power of her music. The melody began to take on a narrative quality. It shifted from playful, light-hearted phrases to deeper, more contemplative passages. Each note seemed to tell a story, each chord an expression of emotion. The audience felt the journey, some unconsciously leaning closer, some closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the experience. The ordinary piano in the small hall had become a vessel for something extraordinary, a way to communicate what words could never convey. She moved into a section that was both challenging and mesmerizing. The complexity of the music demanded precision and focus, yet she played with an ease that seemed effortless. Her fingers glided over the keys, articulating every nuance, creating patterns that felt both intricate and natural. Some of the audience, who had come thinking this would be a casual performance, were now completely enthralled, their initial laughter and doubt replaced by admiration and respect. They could see that she was not just playing music. She was living it. A gentle hush filled the room as she slowed the tempo, letting a soft melody linger. The audience felt a subtle tension, a quiet anticipation, as if they were holding their breath. The music had a way of drawing them in, of capturing their attention without a single word. They could sense the thought and emotion behind each phrase, and the impact was profound. Even those who were not usually moved by music felt a connection, as if the piano spoke directly to their hearts. The performance began to attract attention beyond the hall. A few people in the audience discreetly recorded short clips on their phones, their hands shaking slightly with excitement. They wanted to remember this, to share it, knowing that what they were witnessing was rare. It was not flashy or ostentatious, but it carried a depth and authenticity that made it unforgettable. The young woman at the piano remained unaware of the recordings. She was absorbed entirely in the music, feeling every note and emotion she conveyed. As she progressed, the melody grew more intense. She played with both strength and sensitivity, moving seamlessly between contrasting sections. The audience could feel the rise and fall, the tension and release. Each movement of her hands created waves of sound that resonated deeply. People who had initially doubted her talent were now completely captivated, leaning forward in their seats, unable to look away. They were witnessing a transformation, a moment where ordinary expectations were shattered by extraordinary skill. The hall seemed to vibrate with the energy of the music. Even the walls, lined with faded posters, appeared to absorb and reflect the sounds, enhancing the atmosphere. Some listeners unconsciously tapped their feet, while others sat perfectly still, letting the music wash over them. The young performer's ability to balance technical brilliance with raw emotion was mesmerizing. She had the power to command attention without speaking, to move hearts without words, and to create a sense of unity among strangers through shared experience. She allowed a brief pause, letting a single note resonate and fade slowly. The audience remained silent, holding onto the lingering sound. Then she introduced a new passage, delicate yet intricate, weaving melodies that intertwined in unexpected ways. Some people whispered softly to each other, expressing their astonishment. They could not believe the depth of skill and emotion coming from someone who had seemed so ordinary at first glance. The performance was a lesson in humility and talent, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. As the music grew, she played with increasing intensity, building toward a climactic section. Her fingers moved with agility and precision, each note clear and purposeful. The audience could sense the passion behind every chord. Some felt tears welling in their eyes, moved by the beauty and emotion of the performance. Others felt a sense of awe, a recognition of the dedication and mastery required to achieve such artistry. The young performer was not just playing music. She was expressing a story, a life lived in pursuit of passion and skill. The crescendo filled the hall, creating a moment of shared exhilaration. People were drawn into the performance, caught in the ebb and flow of sound and emotion. They felt the energy building, rising, and falling, swept along by the music. The young woman at the piano played with a sense of freedom and control, guiding the audience through every turn and twist of the melody. They were no longer passive listeners. They were participants in a journey that transcended the ordinary. Gradually, the intensity subsided, and the music became softer, more reflective. The audience felt the change, sensing a moment of intimacy and vulnerability. She played with tenderness, allowing the melody to breathe and settle. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting the gentle notes wash over them. Others leaned forward, captivated by the subtle beauty. The hall, once filled with casual chatter and laughter, had become a space of quiet reverence. People began to realize that the young woman's talent went beyond technical skill. It was her understanding of emotion, her ability to communicate through music, that set her apart. The audience felt the honesty in every note, the sincerity of her expression. Even those who were usually skeptical or critical could not deny the impact of the performance. They had come expecting something ordinary, but they were experiencing something extraordinary, a glimpse into the heart and soul of a true artist. The music shifted once more, combining elements of strength and delicacy. She moved seamlessly between powerful chords and soft, intricate passages, keeping the audience fully engaged. Each transition was precise yet natural, creating a sense of flow that felt effortless. The listeners were captivated, following her every movement, feeling the emotions she conveyed as if they were their own. The young woman at the piano had become more than a performer. She was a guide, leading them through a journey of sound and feeling. As the final notes approached, the audience was completely absorbed. They had been carried along by the music, moved, inspired, and transformed by what they had witnessed. The young woman played with a sense of completion, bringing the story of the performance to a gentle and satisfying close. Each note was deliberate, each pause meaningful, creating a final impression that would linger long after the last chord faded. When the music ended, a hush fell over the hall. The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing the experience. Then, slowly, applause began, tentative at first, then growing in volume and enthusiasm. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, expressing their admiration and gratitude. The young woman at the piano smiled quietly, acknowledging the response with humility. She had shared a piece of herself, and the audience had responded with awe and respect. The performance had been more than a display of skill. It had been a revelation. The audience had learned that talent cannot be judged by appearance, and that passion and dedication can create moments of true beauty. They would remember this evening, the ordinary hall, the unassuming young woman, and the extraordinary music that transformed their expectations and touched their hearts. The experience would stay with them, a reminder of the power of art to inspire and connect. The hall had settled into a quiet calm after the performance, the echoes of the final notes lingering like a gentle whisper. The young woman at the piano sat still for a moment, letting the silence embrace her as the audience slowly regained their composure. People were still processing what they had witnessed, some in quiet amazement, others in heartfelt reflection. She felt a warm sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had reached them in ways she could not have predicted. As she began to pack her instrument, a few audience members approached her cautiously, their eyes wide with respect. They expressed admiration for her skill, not just for the technical mastery but for the emotional depth of the performance. Some admitted that they had doubted her at first, their laughter at her ordinary appearance now replaced by sincere awe. She nodded and smiled quietly, listening patiently, feeling the impact of her music reflected in their words and expressions. Outside the hall, the night air was cool and refreshing. People lingered, talking excitedly about what they had experienced. A few held their phones, replaying recordings they had taken, eager to capture and share the moment with friends and family. The performance had sparked conversations that went beyond music. It was about talent, passion, and the power of art to transform expectations. She walked among the small crowd, greeting a few people, her presence humble despite the admiration surrounding her. The young woman had always loved music for the joy it brought, not for recognition or fame. Yet tonight, She realized that sharing her passion could have a profound effect on others. The quiet applause, the whispered words of praise, and the visible emotions of the audience had created a connection she would carry with her for a lifetime. It was not just about performing. It was about touching hearts, inspiring others, and proving that dedication and love for one's craft could create moments of magic. News of the performance began to spread quickly. People who had attended shared stories with friends, and soon the tale of the unassuming piano performer who stunned everyone with her extraordinary talent reached the local community. Some invited her to perform at other events, eager to see the young woman who had transformed an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, knowing that her journey was only beginning, but confident that her music would continue to touch people. In the days that followed, the impact of her performance became even clearer. Messages of appreciation reached her from people who had been in the audience, expressing how deeply they had been moved. Some shared that the music had reminded them of their own dreams, passions, or lost memories. Others spoke of the courage it took to share such heartfelt music with a crowd that initially doubted her. Each message reinforced the truth she had long known. Music had the power to connect, heal, and inspire. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new melodies and refining her technique. The performance had been a milestone, but she knew that growth required continual effort. Each day brought new challenges, and each day she felt a stronger connection to the music she played. Her love for the piano had never been about applause or recognition, but about the way music allowed her to express herself and communicate feelings beyond words. The audience had simply been fortunate to witness a piece of that journey. The young woman began receiving invitations to perform at larger venues and community events. Each opportunity was approached with careful thought and dedication. She wanted to ensure that her music remained genuine, that every note carried meaning, and that her performances continued to resonate with those who listened. The experience had taught her that the true power of music lay not in technical skill alone, but in the ability to move people emotionally and create connections that transcended ordinary experiences. Her performances became known for their sincerity and depth. Audiences began to expect more than just entertainment. They anticipated a journey, a chance to feel and reflect. She had transformed from a quiet, underestimated performer into a source of inspiration for many. Her story was shared not for its spectacle but for its message. That dedication, passion, and courage could reveal hidden talents and touch lives in unexpected ways. The young woman herself remained humble, aware that her journey was about more than recognition. It was about authenticity and the joy of sharing her art. People who had witnessed her early performances often remarked on the contrast between her modest appearance and the extraordinary music she created. It became a reminder that first impressions could be misleading, and that true talent often lay hidden beneath ordinary surfaces. Her story inspired others to pursue their passions without fear of judgment, to trust in their abilities, and to recognize that perseverance and love for what one does could lead to remarkable outcomes. Over time, she formed connections with other musicians and mentors who recognized her skill and passion. They offered guidance, encouragement, and opportunities to explore new avenues in music. She welcomed these experiences, learning from others while maintaining her unique voice and style. The young woman understood that growth required openness and dedication, and she embraced every chance to expand her abilities and share her gift with a wider audience. As her reputation grew, she remained committed to performing in small venues as well, valuing the intimate connection with listeners that such settings offered. She never forgot the evening when the audience had laughed at her, only to be transformed by the music she played. That memory served as a reminder of the power of authenticity, the importance of staying true to one's passion, and the profound impact that one person could have when they shared their gifts with sincerity. Her story became a quiet legend in the community. People spoke of the young woman who had turned skepticism into awe, who had shown that music could bridge gaps, touch hearts, and create lasting memories. She did not perform for fame, nor did she seek recognition. Her focus was always on the music itself, on the emotion it carried, and on the connection it created between herself and the audience. Yet the effect of her performances was undeniable, leaving an impression on all who experienced them. The young woman often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From humble beginnings, driven by a love for music and countless hours of practice, she had discovered the transformative power of sharing one's passion. The experience reinforced the lesson that talent and dedication could shine through even in the most ordinary circumstances, and that the courage to express oneself authentically could change the way others saw the world. Years later, she would look back on that first performance in the small hall with a quiet smile. It had been a turning point, a moment when her music reached beyond herself and touched the hearts of others. The laughter that greeted her arrival had become a distant memory, replaced by the joy and inspiration that her performance had created. That evening had taught her, and everyone who witnessed it, that true talent cannot be measured by appearances, and that passion, dedication, and authenticity are the keys to leaving a lasting impact. She continued to play, to teach, and to inspire others through her music. Her story was shared not for fame, but for its message of hope and encouragement. People remembered the young woman who had quietly sat at a piano, underestimated by those around her, and who, through talent and heart, had created a moment of pure magic. Her journey reminded everyone that greatness often lies hidden, waiting for the courage to reveal itself, and that the power of music could touch lives in ways that words alone never could.